You are here for the daily July PIF 365 talk or 365 PIF talk. I am your host, Lani Kim, and you are here for a Pay It Forward PIF talk. Our one ask is that you pay it forward in some way. It can be anything that you choose, some kind of act of thoughtfulness or kindness that you extend to somebody else. So if you're a mom, you might want to pass on this information, the link to the 365 PIF talk to a friend who you know could use this information, as well as check out our website for all the other amazing coaches and all the amazing topics that they're going to be chatting about. So again, I'm Lani Kim, and I'm going to be your host for July, and the theme is going to be Rocking Out Motherhood. And really, if you're a dad, welcome, because this is really about rocking out parenthood. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about what the month is going to entail. So I'm going to break it down into 4 weeks. We're on week 1. And this week's theme is called Making the Cut. And today's theme is going to be audition them or it, not the other way around. And the way I think about this is very much an audition for a specific part. And the reason that I say a specific part is because so often we put this pressure on ourselves to be everything. And we can be everything, but we also have to know what that entails and how we best do give our 100%. Because so often what we're doing is we are going wide rather than deep. So when we are thinking about doing anything, right, very often we want to cover all our bases rather than understanding what are our gifts and talents, and really focusing on using those to help serve others. And you'll hear me repeat this idea very often, and you'll hear me really emphasize the fact that when we go deep, that is where we differentiate our gifts from others, right? I think a lot of people can be good at a lot of things. And so if we're doing a surface level of gifts and talents, like a survey, right, of what our gifts and talents are, or that's what we're offering, probably what we offer most people could do. And that's probably why we tell ourselves to be so vanilla, right? Nothing wrong with vanilla, but as the expression goes. And then also, we don't really get to hit the juicy parts of who we are because we're doing this really top surface survey, right? And we instead really need to find what it is that we're good for, right? Good at doing. What are our passions? And I want to say, kind of like an audition, right? You go in for a role, and you usually will read the script, and they'll have the characters, and they have a specific description. And they may be brief, just depending on the script, but they are different from each other, right? Each role, is different from each other. And oftentimes, as you read through the script, what will happen is they'll have parts and instructions, not just the dialogue, but not exactly parts of it, but like little asides and things in parentheses to keep in mind as you keep in characters, ways that you might say something or mannerisms that you may use. And the reason is because they're developing the character, right? Just like an audition, just like you're developing a character, right? You want to develop your gifts and talents. And so often, what we do is kind of create a disconnect between who we were pre-kids and who we are now, right? And because gifts and talents do take time, very often we are so hesitant to invest in ourselves. So let me bring this back to the audition them and or it. The way I think about it is know what that deeply is that you're going for when you're going to take something on. So if you're going to decide to apply for a job, or if you're deciding what type of role you'd like to take in maybe an extracurricular activity that your children do, or even something that you have as a self-interest, quote unquote self-interest, you get to audition it. You get to know what it is that you want to take out of this from this experience. Because what it helps you do is make a decision and really audition that experience or maybe even that relationship. Because when you have it defined, right, you get to say yay or nay. And when you do this, just remember that this is not just about you when you audition something. This is also about the experience or the other person. And the reason I say this is when you say no to something, remember that allows you and the other person also to say yes to something else. I think so often as moms, we're trying to control everything. We want to give everything. We want to be the yes mom and do everything, right? But remember, everything you say yes to means that you have to also say no to something else. And we have to know what is our why. Like, why are we saying yes or even no to something, right? So with a yes comes a no. So the reason I bring this up is because I want us to start to take a step back from being the yes mom and start to audition these things that we do. What is it that we came for this experience or this relationship, right? And what do we want out of it? And how is it going to serve both people? And when I say both people, I mean, obviously you. And so often we don't want to do that, right? We sacrificially take on so many things, right? So talking about auditions, right? If you have a play, if you're putting on a play, would you like an audience of, say, maybe 50 enthusiastic, really excited audience members? Or would you rather have an audience, maybe like even 1,000 people, of very mediocre, polite applause people, right? Right? You pause for that dramatic effect and you get right, from 1,000 people? Or do you want 50 people who are like, woo, yeah, right? So when you are making these decisions when you're auditioning things, right? Remember that you don't have to serve 1,000 people. It might be 50. And you are going to serve those people so well. And they're going to have an amazing experience, right? Rather than keeping those 1,000 people who are like, when is this play over? I wish I could be watching something else or doing something else, or I'd rather be doing the dishes, right? So when you audition things, right, so often we think that we're trying to audition for a part, right? Trying to be good enough for that part, trying to fit a mold instead of the other way around. You're auditioning things. What is it that you want from your experiences or your relationships? Because, so often we'll do things, I think, out of guilt or a sense of obligation, but I think often that is tied to a sense of guilt. But are you really showing up as the best person for that role, right? And I mean, you really get to audition things for yourself too, right? Does this, so, actors will, in demand actors, right, will receive different scripts and they get to choose whether they want to play that role or not. And it's based on a lot of different factors, but you get to do the same thing too for yourself when you're asked to fulfill some kind of role, whether again it's an experience or a relationship with someone, right? Because really, when we have relationships with people, we are somewhat in a role, right? We aren't bringing all the pieces of ourselves, right? And nothing's wrong with that, right? Um, there's a context for all the different relationships that you have, but you are going to show up in a certain way, and is that best serving you? Because remember, when you best serve yourself, you also best serve other people. And the way I think about this is, we have different dress codes, right? When we go to different places, we maybe when you're out and about, you can wear practically anything you want, right? It could be shorts and t-shirt. But if you're going to say a wedding, right, you wouldn't wear shorts and a t-shirt. You would wear something nicer, right? Something with a little more thought, something a little more elegant, whatever that looks like for you, right? So, a dress, a suit, something that shows that you're showing up for a specific role, right? Just like the bride typically is going to have a specific dress for her for the role that she's playing, right? And she's probably not going to wear that dress around town, right? It's for her wedding day because it's special, because she bought that dress with a certain intention. So I want you to think about, where is it, or what is it that, what's the role you're playing in certain relationships and experiences? And I want you to really think about, is this your best performance, right? Or the role that you get to play best. Now, obviously, there's things in life that we're going to do that we're not always going to love. But there's a sense of choosing that role versus I have to. And even if it's true, even if it's a role you have to, say, for instance, like diaper duty in the middle of the night, right? It's something you have to do, right? But when we also think about it in a different way, like we choose to do this, the way that our brain thinks about it is so different, right? So I think about uh, Brussels sprouts. I don't know what your reaction to Brussels sprouts are, but our family loves Brussels sprouts. We really do. And so when I make them, my kids get really excited. Um, and I don't cook them probably as often as they would like, just because it's a little bit of a tedious task the way I make them. And so I prefer to do roasted cabbage because it's a lot faster process and a lot easier to make. But it's not Brussels sprouts. It's cabbage, it's not Brussels sprouts. Um, but what I'm saying is the way my kids think about it is that they get to eat Brussels sprouts. Now, if we had guests, they may not feel the same way, right? They may think I have to eat Brussels sprouts, right? Now, even if everyone technically has to eat them, right? Um, especially like say for some reason, I don't know, I had a young person staying with us for an extended amount of time, maybe not just one day, I would tell them, you need to eat your vegetables. My kids, you have to eat your vegetables. And so the way my kids would be thinking about it though is like, I get to eat Brussels sprouts. And that other child may be like, oh, I have to eat Brussels sprouts. In the end, everyone has to eat them. But the way they think about it is so different. Therefore, that's going to affect their own experience. Right. So when I say audition them or audition your experience, what I'm tapping into is the fact that these are decisions that you get to make. You get to decide how you think about the experience. And you get to say yes or no. But remember, one is not better than the other because essentially you're saying yes and no every single time you make a decision, right? Yes to that decision means no to a lot of other opportunities. When you say yes to something, you're actually essentially saying no to more things than you're saying yes to, right? Because if you say yes to, say, for instance, I was part of my daughter's graduation committee. And it was, I mean, for me, it was only a year, not even a year commitment because they had a previous board, but they all dissolved pre-pandemic. So I was a new board member. But it was really intense. And I had to say no to a lot of things because I had obligations. We had meetings. There were tasks that needed to be taken care of. The day of grad night, I had to help set up. So there were a lot of things I had to say no to. More things I had to say no to than I said yes to, right? So just think of the power of a yes, right? And the power of a no. They're both equally important. But remember, when you're saying yes, you're saying no to a whole lot of things. When so often we think the opposite, we have to say yes to everything. And we see this narrow bandwidth of things to say yes. Oh, I got to do this. 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 But remember, for every yes that you say, right, you're essentially, I don't know, I'll just give it a number, saying 100 no's, right? Because whatever you commit to, everything else during that time that it takes, or even the mental capacity that it takes, you have to say no to, right? So you have power in a no, just as you have power in a yes, right? You get to audition these things. You get to know the role that they play in your life. You get to write out that character description, right? So if you volunteer maybe to be soccer mom. You get to decide yes or no, first of all. You also get to decide what it is that that role is going to look like in your life. And I don't mean um, who's, I have to make the snack list, who's bringing snacks each week. I mean, how that role plays into your life, right? Or how it plays out in your own life, how you interact with that role. Because you're fulfilling a role, right? You audition this part. Do I want this? Do I not? Yes, this is a role I want to take. No, this is a role I don't want to take. So if you take on the role of soccer mom, right? You get to define exactly what that description looks like. Is it going to be something you pour a whole lot of time and effort to, right? Are you dedicated? And or you get to, on the flip side, be the mom who does a good job but is efficient, right? Maybe it takes 15 minutes out of each day. You text everyone something and that's it. That's your role. You really get to decide. You get to audition these different roles, right? And you get to write that character description for yourself, what you take out of it. How are you going to think about it, right? So the other way I think about this is when we watch a play, right? Or say you are on the stage, right? Because really that's what I was talking about, auditioning, right? So say you have a role, you're on stage. If this was a play and people are coming to watch it, you would stay in your lane, right? If you're playing, I don't know, the Wicked Witch, right? And somebody else is playing, I don't know, the heroine, right? Or the hero. You wouldn't step out of character and decide to take on the other person's role, right? You would just let it be. They get to play their part, even if they do it poorly or not up to par, right? So when you take on these different roles in your life, right? Know why you're taking the role. Number one, why is always going to be the fundamental building block for everything that you do, the decisions that you make. But know your role too. What is it? What was the description, the character description that you wanted to fulfill, right? Because so often as moms, again, we're trying to do everything. We're trying to control everything. And we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to. And on stage, wouldn't that look pretty funny if you were in a play and you're playing the witch and then you go and try to start reciting lines of the hero, right? That'd be so odd. That wouldn't work well, right? You do well, and the person whose role you're trying to take wouldn't appreciate it, right? So keep this in mind when you go well through life, but as a mom, right? Know your role in something. And I don't mean to make it seem limited. It's not to be limiting, right? But to tap into your gifts and talents and to know where you want to put boundaries. And so I want to kind of distinguish the difference between boundaries and limitations, right? So often when we say no, or when we see that something needs to be done, we so often see it as a limitation, like, oh, I don't want to limit myself. Let me try this, let me try that. Just know the difference between a boundary and a limitation, right? So a boundary is completely fine to have because that's what keeps us safe, right? Just like when you're driving, right? There's lane lines, there are boundaries. It keeps us safe. And when we're driving next to cars, right, we do best when we stay in our lane and they stay in their lane, right? So just keep that in mind because you get to focus on the road ahead, right? And you get to notice the safety signs, right? You get to notice the other things about driving when you stay in your lane. If you're kind of cutting in and out, right, you're just so focused on the cars around you and cutting in and out that you're actually not paying attention to the other signs around you, right? Like, if you've ever missed an exit on a freeway, right, it's because we're distracted, right? We're not focusing on the task at hand, right? So what's the cost of missing an exit, right? You have to drive, now you have to turn around, that's gas, that's time, right? So don't be afraid to have boundaries and allow that, allow yourself to focus, right? So again, auditioning them, if it's a relationship or the experience, and remember that your yes is just as powerful as your no. And when you say yes to something, you're saying no to a whole lot of things, right? And just remember on the flip side, when it's a relationship, we think we're the center of it so often. Like, if I say no, this person's just not going to know what to do. We have to save this person, right? Just remember that when you say, well, yes, right, to someone, right, that also means a no for everything else for them too. And if you don't love what you're doing with that person or love that relationship, right, or maybe a friend wants you to join them to do something, or even, I mean, as moms, right, if you have multiple kids, they ask you to do something, or like, oh gosh, we have to do it, right? Or we think if we have to say no at that moment, oh shoot, I have to say no. And we have mom guilt. Remember, when you say no to them, they get to explore something else, try something new, right? And for me, my kids probably find each other more amusing than me, right? So sometimes it's like, no, go ask your brother or sister, right? In my family, especially I have an 8-year-old and her siblings are quite a bit older than her, right? But they're still more fun than I am. um, and so I want you to remember that, right? The power of your yes and the power of your no. Don't be afraid to use your no. Um, and and that is, I think, would be my challenge to you for this week, is to really take this mindset with you and think about a decision that is something that's on your plate, and use this process rather than thinking there's a right and a wrong, one right and one wrong, is to take this process with you through that decision. Because at the end, you want to, I mean, I think we all just want to be happy, right? But really, it's a sense of satisfaction in what you're doing, because when you're giving your all because you want to, right? People feel that, and the other person on the other end is going to appreciate that, right? And again, if you say no, they have an opportunity to find someone who is enthusiastic about what it is that they're asking, right? All right. So that was week number 1, auditioning them or it. And I just want to remind you that I'm here for all the month of July, Monday through Friday. And that same link you used today to get into the Zoom room is the same link for the entire month. You just have to click on it. And you are here through Life Coach University 365 PIF Talks. And our one ask is that you pay it forward with a thoughtful gesture or an act of kindness towards someone else. So I'm Lani Kim, and I'll be here tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you.